From the 809 Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Inwood, New York City, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air, where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home in what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm Aaron Sims.
I'm Jonathan Bell.
And this is Live and Local. It's our podcast dedicated to showcasing the musicians of Upper Manhattan. We talk to them about what they do, and best of all, listen to them to perform their work live in one of our favorite local uptown venues here at 809. So who is joining us today, Jonathan?
Aaron, today we welcome trombonist and composer Daniel Linden. After receiving a M.M. from New England Conservatory in trombone performance, Danielle toured the U.S., Europe, and Asia with orchestras, opera companies, and rock bands. He has played regularly on Broadway and off-Broadway, most recently in The Fiddler on the Roof, in Yiddish off-Broadway, and has made many recordings in classical, jazz, and pop world genres. He has performed on Fox News, CBS, MSNBC, and The Artie Lang Show. He has played numerous festivals, including the Montreal Jazz Festival, Lincoln Center, Out of Doors, and Bang on a Can Marathon. Active in world music and jazz, Daniel has worked with David Byrne, Slavic Soul Party, Asphalt Orchestra, the Ed Palermo Big Band, the Gregorio Uribe Big Band, and Frank London's Klezmer Brass All-Stars. Daniel has taught trombone at Brandeis University and is a teaching artist for Carnegie Hall. Today, though, he has traded in his trombone for a guitar and will be sharing some of his original compositions with us on Live and Local.
Well, I can't wait. Without further ado, Daniel Linden.
Like we all went in for surgery, and we're waiting in the room with all the bright fluorescent lights. We don't know if you'll get called or me. We're not sure how much good it did to confess last night. The man who came the night before has no idea what they have in store. He's sure it's rigged, he can't be pegged. Won't let them make him foolish anymore. In the waiting room, I've been thinking about the summer. In the waiting room, I bumped into you. At least I think I recognized you. Walking endlessly to catch my breath. You're like a thief stealing air that's fresh, distilled, drawing into shades. Recall connection before it fades. In the waiting room, I've been thinking about the summer. In the waiting room, yeah, I bumped into you. At least I think I recognized you. Guess I'll see you in the summer. All right, that was a brand new song. And this is an older song about drinking in bars, when you can drink in a bar. I got 3 red eyes that burn so hard, and a life locked up down in a basement. Now freaks, no matter where you are, I understand how you deal with frustration. Well, there you are, 3 drinks later, time froze. And now I see where I've gone astray. I'll fix it later today. I say as I inspect my empty glass, and I know somehow nothing can save me except the war on words which can never be won, and the slightly disturbing dream of American music. Well, there you are, 3 drinks later, time froze. And now I see where I've gone astray. I'll fix it later today. Well, there you are, 3 drinks later, time froze. And now I see where I've gone astray. I'll fix it later today.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel. How have you been?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, guys. This is really great.
Well, what else are you going to do in the middle of a pandemic but go find a place to play live for 4 people?
That's the most people you're going to get right now, you know? So.
This is true. We're in compliance, and to say our crew gave him a round of applause. It's just been so wonderful to hear live music and great live music at that.
Appreciate it.
So could you tell us, please, what you just played for us?
Sure. So I played See You Then, which is just a brand new song. Because I've been doing a lot of electronic music lately, and then when we spoke, I was like, man, I got to write a new song because I've done a lot of acoustic stuff over the.
I didn't know I put that kind of pressure on you by inviting you on the show.
No, because I have all these songs that are maybe a year or more old, and I just kind of wanted to do something, you know, right now, something I could connect to. So I got one of those, and then one of my favorite older songs, and that was called 3 Drinks Later. And See You Then is pretty much about the time we live in today. And 3 Drinks Later was written, you know, basically like thinking about it at a bar and kind of getting melancholy at a bar at a time when you could go into bars, which I really like to do, you know.
So wait a minute. The waiting room
Yes.
thing that kept coming back, was that a refrain or not?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess this, you know, I'm so self-absorbed here. As soon as he said the waiting room, of course, I had flashbacks to my wife's birth. Well, not
Sure.
her birth, the birth of our son.
You're not that much older than her, okay?
But this, just to be clear, this did not have anything to do with delivery, child delivery, or could it have some sort of? Is
Maybe.
it interpretively okay to have taken it that way?
I love that you say that because, first of all, it's a positive connotation.
Right.
My wife actually gave birth to our 3rd baby boy earlier
Number
this
3?
year. Number 3.
Congratulations.
Oh my God.
I still don't realize that I'm the kind of, you know, I'm that person who has 3 little boys, but they're amazing little guys, and so I've been in the waiting room a little bit.
So maybe subconsciously it was already you've been there for a long time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. It's one of the few places I've been indoors on a regular basis outside of my home recently. But I like that though, and it gives it a more, I mean, yeah, like I said, positive connotation.
So sorry to interrupt.
Please.
But was the I was trying to catch as much of the words as I could, right? Is it a Zoom waiting room? Like it could be a lot of things. Like what?
I was thinking about just in my mind when I was writing it, like a hospital waiting room where everybody is just kind of not where they want to be right now. You know, you've been sitting there for 5 hours or something, and that kind of feels like, to an extent, where we are. You know, you could make something of that time somehow, and you could do something. I mean, you're kind of a prisoner of your own mind for good and for bad. And so sometimes, you know, you're in the boring place, you're in traffic or something, and maybe you're, you know, doing something really creative in your own mind. You know, you're writing a song in your head, or you're reading a book that's just unbelievable, and like getting into that place inside of yourself in the context of something that's really rigid and boring. And I just think of those bright fluorescent, you know, like I wrote in the song, bright fluorescent lights. It's kind of intense and without a sense of art to them, you know. But I don't know, just kind of imagery that came up during this time.
So because I want to get a little bit at some point into your expertise on the trombone, but could you tell us a little bit about just songwriting in general? How also your guitar playing? When did that start?
Sure.
And how long have you been writing original songs at the same time as practicing with the rigor that you need to play some of the repertoire that clearly you've played?
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. I think it's just always been a balance. It's almost been like my off time, but it's become a part of my career. So I started playing trombone around 10, but I started playing guitar at around 13. I got really into bands like Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., Pavements, these kind of experimental, noisy rock bands. And then I just got deeper, and then I got into R&B and soul music and things. And so I'm listening to that at the same time I'm playing, orchestral rep and practicing trombone and getting ready for auditions and stuff like that. And so I always had like the legit head almost. I hate to use that phrase, but like, you know, I know about music theory, reading all these clefs, sight read all this stuff and be ready for the gig. And then kind of my rock and roll brain. And on guitar, because I kind of learned to play from listening to records I enjoyed, which are not traditional, like, it's just more rock and roll, you know. Right. It's less trained. And then things kind of began, as I learned more about what I was doing on the guitar, almost from my classical brain. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm doing that I like this for the song. The modulation here works, you know. And so I'm kind of combining things and started writing songs in college. I would play out in Boston, in Cambridge, in the kind of club scene area occasionally. And then, if I'll just keep going into what I'm doing today. When I first got to New York, I was just playing sessions on trombone, you know. So I went to this great session, Emil Charlap. He's like this, I don't know if you know him. He's like this legendary, from what I understand, a contractor for movies from like the past 30, 40 years. And he would have this weekly session in Times Square where they'd sight read jazz and orchestral arrangements. And Lou Soloff would come by, like all these killing players from Broadway and stuff. And this wonderful guy who's in town who I met there, Charlie Gordon, who's just a great Broadway trombonist. I met him there and he's been really sweet to me. But I went there, somebody called me for that. And I met John Carlson, who's the trumpet player in Slavic Soul Party. Okay. He's a fantastic player. And I in Boston was playing some Balkan music and some klezmer music. And so he said to me, hey, come by, sit in with Slavic Soul Party. And so I did, and then they started hiring me. They were on the roster for Carnegie Hall for this outreach or community events kind of wing. What is it? My mind is blanking now. But basically, I played some concerts with them, one on a tour with them in Maine, and met the head of the Lullaby Project for Carnegie Hall, who was also organizing some of these concerts. They needed a trombone for the Lullaby Project, and then I came in with a trombone and guitar and singing, and that was like 6 years ago, and they've had me on the roster ever since. And
Wow.
It's just this funny kind of combination of trombone and guitar that in all these things. So I've been writing pop songs with Lullaby up until like last week. I think we did a session.
Okay.
And then also, playing trombone
And
I assume you have a follow through on the Lullaby.
well, I was going to say, it's
Sounds very interesting.
Jonathan, I think you channeled it because, I mean, the Lullaby Project, is it not about you're writing with mothers to be, expectant mothers,
That was
and
beautiful.
people who do not, who have that, And so you see what I did there?
I didn't even think of that even now. I like how you. I don't know why.
It's my job to see the whole picture,
Getting a
folks. But seriously though, it's like, can you tell a little bit of our listeners about the project and the experience of composing with expecting and new mothers? Because I'm expecting that they're not musicians.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody always says to us, I don't write songs. I'm not a songwriter. I can't do this. And the way it works is usually 2 lullaby artists are assigned to a site. And those are different sites. For a long time, I've been working with Sienna House Shelter in the Bronx, but I've worked at Jacobi Medical Center, the Bronx, and various other places, detention facilities and things.
Oh.
But they'll say that, and then we have basically a book of prompts that asks them questions to get words down on paper. That's all we need, words down on paper. So it'll say, what are some names that you have for your child? What are experiences that you enjoy, that you've done with your child? What are hopes and dreams you have for your child? And so they'll write this down, and then we'll say, well, how do you want the lullaby to sound? Do you want it to be fast, energetic, slow, soothing? And sometimes they'll hum a little melody. We'll say, can you say the words in rhythm? We'll ask if you could sing it, but if they can't, we'll just say the words kind of the tempo you would want. Then we start playing with stuff and say, how about this melody? And we'll kind of add things. We don't want to jump in. We want them to write as much as possible.
Right.
And so before you know it, you have a refrain.
Yeah.
And then once you have the refrain, they're usually in. They're like, oh man, that's fantastic.
Right.
It could be a few words. They think it's got to be a whole thing. And then we take some of the other words and craft the verse. So that's the kind of the experience. Like we say, everybody can write a song with this. Don't worry about it. We're going to do something for you. It's going to be yours. It's going to be your words and So that's kind of how it is, and you kind of have to be very sensitive with it.
When you say we, can you give us a picture? I mean, how many people? What are the instruments? And you're with this mom.
Yeah.
And is there a leader who's or is it really like kind of an egalitarian process?
I would say it's egalitarian. It's changed over the years, but for the past 3 years, I think it's been an in-residence model, which means we come to the same site either every week or every couple of weeks or something, and we meet with some people. And so this year I'm working with this wonderful singer, a vocalist named Jeanette Berry, and she's just fantastic. It's been one of the nice things in this world that we have is we've been forced to work remotely, which is less connection, but we're using something called Soundtrap, which is basically like a Logic or GarageBand, but you could share files. You could record into the same project in real time.
Okay.
And so we're able to kind of listen back and collaborate and add some MIDI instruments and give a more finished project. But Jeanette will add a lot of background vocals. I'll program some drums and some keyboard synths and stuff and layer guitars on it. So that's been really nice. But in past years, for a long time, I was working with Paula Garcia, who's an amazing violinist in town who does a lot of new music. Long Leash, I think is the name of her group. So we used to go into Sienna House and I would have guitar and sing, and she would play violin.
So at least 2 people.
Yes, usually 2 people. And then every so often we send in our favorite lullabies or things that we felt were really, connected to us for one reason or another. And we go into the studio and do a more fleshed out production. Okay. So James Shipp, who's a great percussionist and one of the lullaby teaching artists,
produces the sessions to an extent, and we go into we've done different studios. And so then a lot of us I bring in my trombone, a multi-track, salsa trombone licks and stuff.
Right.
I love that stuff because I'm jumping back and forth with the guitar, voice, trombone, laying down lines,
Right.
acoustic. The teaching artists play a lot of different instruments. So when you put those together, it's pretty cool. And you could catch a lot of that stuff.
And I wasn't even thinking when I asked the question about you still doing this now.
Yeah.
And doing these sessions online.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of perking up because what was the name of the app? Just not to be like commercial for the app, but
Soundtrap.
Soundtrap?
Yeah, we've been everybody on Lullaby, and you don't need to do it, but it's been something that's been nice in real time.
Right.
We could share files, and we could show the participant and say, "Oh, you like that? Okay, we're going to add the vocals now," and then I'll talk to her while Jeanette's adding the participant while Jeanette's adding vocals.
What a cool way to make a living.
Yeah, I mean,
I got to say that's a really great job that that combines creativity with sort of this satisfying social connection and purpose and doing some good. I've never heard of it, and it sounds fantastic.
And you're meeting so many other collaborators too who are working in the business as well. And I'm sure once or twice they've given you an email or a phone call saying, "So you happen to be free in March on this day to help play this gig we have?" Or...
Yeah, it's an amazing, very eclectic group of musicians, and it's really cool. Exactly. I mean, it's a really cool community. Great players, all different kinds of strengths and concentrations and stuff. But it's enjoyable, and it came, like I kind of described, it sort of came almost out of nowhere. It was this random converging of things, and I'm so glad it's lasted.
So, quickly, if you don't mind, back to the songs that you played.
Please.
You said that bracket that. Pardon me. I want to go back to what you said about legit head.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting. I think a lot of people who have grown up in classical music, and not only classical, but I would say certain more traditional straight ahead jazz worlds too, occupy this space where they toggle between the two, and they would like to find a way to synthesize it somehow. Could you think of some composers or perform artists who represent to you a successful synthesis of that type of in between the legit and the part, that those influences that you kind of keep over here somewhere, but want to find a way to bring it in?
Yeah, let me think about that. I mean, I feel like that's an emerging part of, what we call quote unquote new music.
Yes.
Where the idea that there's like high art and low art, maybe that's not the right way to think about things. All music is incredible when it's done with care, Right. And so, I mean, just thinking about, I play with this chamber orchestra called Contemporaneous.
Okay.
And it's a 19-piece group, and there are people within that group that are doing a lot of cool things. There's a group called Teague, and two of the members of our group play in this awesome percussion trio that's really just rocking out and playing things that are sort of like noise rock, and then they're adding other elements of percussion. And I don't want to speak for them, but like I'm hearing like some Afrobeat kind of stuff.
Right.
But that's Teague, and that's with like Amy Garapick and Matt Evans. I think a lot of people, Pat Donner, that's a different Pat. Pat Savoda plays a lot of, he's the bassist in Contemporaneous, and he has a band called Beethoven, and I think they do a lot of that stuff.
Nice.
Another music group.
Is there any reason for the 19?
Is that significant?
The ensemble number for the Contemporaneous, or just
I don't think so, but I'm not totally
just
sure.
Curious.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. The founders, David Bloom and Dilly Mattingly, might have something to say about it. I don't know. I think it's...
But you seem very active and interested in improvisational music that finds a space for those with a classical background, as well as jazz. Like that's something that I've seen really flower over the past 15, 20 years in New York, is a proliferation of new music ensembles
Yeah.
that allow classical people to finally let their hair down, so to speak, you know what I mean, and just
Yeah.
play and improvise without feeling like they've had to go through this quote unquote normal jazz type of regimen of learning the jazz scales and the jazz language. Like, okay, there's if you've been playing Stravinsky and Bartok all your life,
Right.
you can also find places with like-minded musicians
Yeah.
to just play.
Yeah.
And just, and that's been very, I don't know, I've seen a growth in that.
I totally agree with you. And I think it's about the language, everybody has their own language, and if you're able to like codify that into improvising. I'm kind of in between that because I did take jazz courses at NEC,
Right.
and I've always tried, and it's kind of, I'm just always practicing both, actually. I'm
Nice.
always practicing patterns. I'm always practicing just jazz standards, just as part of my routine, and I'm thinking of them as technique as well. So I'm working on them with my classical horn. I'm going through etudes and trying to like just synthesize it all together. So it's a big project, but
Is that still contemporary improvisation is that what it's called?
at NEC, at New England Conservatory, yes.
Used to
there
be
is.
Third Stream.
Yeah. Oh,
I
totally.
mean, Rand Blake. Does
Oh,
that
man.
bring back, yeah.
And it's funny you say that. One of the lyrics, I love that you brought that up, from 3 Drinks Later. There's a review of Rand Blake's a concert of his, and it was something about the slightly disturbing dream of American music was in the review, and I put that in my song. So that's Rand Blake's review.
That's cool.
I love that you brought him up. He was amazing. I used to go to his apartment in Brookline and watch film noir movies. This amazing jazz pianist who's really into film noir and
Yes.
orchestrating on the piano. He would like make me and my girlfriend at the time. He would make us watch like these. I mean, it was cool. Like
It's like
film noir
Clockwork
music.
Orange. They made you watch these jazz
He's
movies.
a character, cool dude.
That's
though.
so great that you got to have that experience.
Yeah, he's
him,
a creative
yeah.
guy.
Well, let's talk about your experience now.
Okay.
You've been able to transcend keeping yourself employed and working with ensembles virtually, but how has this pandemic allowed you to branch out in other directions as a composer?
I think a lot of quiet time because like the little kids are all home, and it's been a lot of time the quiet time in my house is at night. And I started getting into writing electronic music basically as this was all going down. And one of the tracks that you're going to hear or that you heard was written right at the end there, where everything is just kind of unfolding. We don't know what's happening. But since then, I've written a lot of electronic music, and it's that quiet moment with headphones that I have more time because I'm not at the gig. I'm not playing late into the night, like Latin gigs until 1:30 in the morning. I mean, I miss that stuff so much, shows until 11, taking the train back, totally exhausted. But now my brain lights up a little bit. And so I play softly on the acoustic, or I play electronic music. And so it's been, in that way, it's actually been oddly a creative time for me.
That's very cool. Kind of like, I'm wondering now, this is like a little bit of a theory here. I'm just wondering if this lockdown period has just caused people inadvertently to get into electronic music, especially in New York. Because I can relate to, I can't play my piano. It's too late. The kid's home.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt his nap time. So I put my headphones on. I think I think myself, I've kind of like checked out a few more plugins and just
Oh, cool.
myself, and kind of
Yeah.
dabbled more in Logic, but by necessity.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I think a lot of people, I've seen other people, like another trombonist wrote, "Hey, I just finished my electronic album." And I wrote on Facebook, I was like, "Me too."
Trombonists unite.
Yeah, exactly.
going electronic. Well, in lieu of Daniel hiring a moving van to bring his entire workstation here today, he was kind enough to give our technical director, Ken Coughlin, a couple of new electronic music compositions to share with our on-air audience. So
Nice.
what are we going to hear, Daniel?
Okay, so I think Blue and Gray is the first track. Okay, so this is something I wrote actually in Western Massachusetts in the mountains, and there's just a lot of blues and grays there. It's very dark and very cold in
That's
the
where I'm
wintertime.
from, by the way.
Sorry?
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Western, yeah.
And I was going to say, and incredibly beautiful. So there's that. And then We're in It now. I'll just let the music play, speak for itself.
Sounds good. Ken, if you would, let's listen to 2 new electronic compositions by Daniel Linden. Wow.
Was that you singing?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Very nice. What other besides vocals? Were there any other like live mic'd elements, or was that it? Just
Completely electronic. Yeah.
so all the beats were programmed.
Totally.
You're-
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, manually programmed. Yeah. Exactly.
Sheesh. That must have been maybe the most painstaking process for. I should ask you. I'm just wondering, as someone who doesn't have a background much in programming rhythm tracks, just getting up to speed on a beat sequencer for me has been the biggest like barrier to entry
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
to doing just logic stuff and anything that's
Totally.
like MIDI. The rhythm side has been for some people it's the easiest thing.
Yeah, I think just for me, I've been staying away from the sequencing and just doing manually, like drum machine, drum
Oh, is that
pads
right?
and
Okay.
stuff.
Nice.
And then just locking in with other things. Yeah, I really enjoy doing something and doing way too much of it, and then taking things out bit by bit.
Okay, right.
So more and more I've been doing that, especially with the first track that you heard.
Right.
There's a lot more drums in it and actually a lot more things. And I was like, man, that hi-hat, it's just too much. I need to leave some space there.
Super
and so-
cinematic, though.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I think as a very like I could definitely.
Yeah, incredibly tonal too, like you said. I mean, there was it had so much space in it,
Yes.
and it really we have the benefit of hearing where you came from when you had it in mind. But even without that, there was so much space within the music itself, despite the layering. And like you said, you can move things in and around, but the key is it doesn't sound like it's layering. It sounds like it is a soundscape in many ways. And the percussion, I think, moves that percussion. I thought really moved the song along.
Yeah.
As far as
Had a square
as far as a song.
pusher. Do you know square pusher?
Sure, totally. Yeah,
it
I
had
love
that
it.
sort of vibe to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that stuff.
Yeah, and then the second piece, I thought, wow. I mean, just great. It had so many different moods to it. I thought that when the drums do come in, they're quite aggressive. I feel,
Yeah.
in a great, but that not overpowering. It's very, it's got a lot of oomph and angst in it, and then your vocals are so soothing. I have to say, it's kind of enjoy, and the back and forth. It's this whole kind of other melodic element coming in, like an echo over your shoulder. It's a very interesting texture bringing into it. So you have, I feel like, a kind of diverse styles going against each other.
I like that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words, first of all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, literally, from a just harmony-wise, it's very simple, but there is that kind of collision of just minor, a little bit of a minor triadic pattern, and then switching between that and a major. And then I love music that clashes against itself in a pleasing way that is like dissonance and consonance. So that if there's something where there's a repeated, almost a white noise thing happening, and then there's like a really consonant moving bass line below it, it gives that like kind of repeating, maybe dissonant thing a different sound. As the bass line moves, the thing that's the same and almost like textural becomes like a chord, and then a different chord, and then a different chord. So I love that. And then I love the aggressive. I mean, another thing that, like Aphex Twin, some of the ambient stuff.
I almost said Aphex Twin or Orbital, maybe even.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these aggressive beats that really drive a song and almost emphasize the beauty of like the keyboard part or something like that. I mean, it makes it, I don't know, it like makes it shine or something.
Yeah, and also too, particularly in your second piece, I thought the things that were constant had a different color. Coming back from the different the different progressives of the aggressive drum programming. I thought that was really interesting how they would have different colors coming back from those different, I'll say, arpeggiated drums. I'll say, is that even possible to say that?
That's interesting. I like.
I don't even know if that's even possible.
No, it's very possible to say it. But I agree. I love the way you say that though, because I mean the timbres that you play with, I mean the drums still have these timbres, and they're still kind of, it almost feels like an arpeggiation. I like the way you describe that.
Well, thanks. Well, we could listen to your music all day. What an incredible multi-instrumentalist.
Without giving any of the chef's, deepest secrets away, giving them away. Can you give our listeners maybe a couple? I don't want to get into gear and software too much, but can you maybe let the listeners know some of the what platform you work on? Maybe some samples you use,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm basically just using Logic Pro, and I'm using stock sounds, and I've picked up some different. I don't know. I'm going back and forth between pre-programmed like hip hop drums and house drums. Really basic stuff, because at least for now, I find that people get wrapped up in sound, and I love timbre and texture and everything, but I feel like limitations are good too. So right now, for this time, I'm just using stock sounds.
I would say most people do not plumb the possibilities enough of what you can get out of Logic's own sounds and the various filters that you can spend hours on that.
So much.
A lot of people are a little quick to look for third party. Sometimes they are better sounds, but there's a lot. As someone who uses Logic, I'm with you. I'm totally pro fiddling as much as possible with the stock sounds.
Well, speaking of more sounds, where can listeners go find more of your sounds?
Thank you. Yeah. So DanielLindenMusic.com is my website, and my project, my electronic, and also some acoustic stuff is under Hoosick on SoundCloud and also on Bandcamp. Hoosick is S-O-O. Oh, sorry. I'm going to respell that. H-O-O-S-A-C. Hoosick. That's the SoundCloud page and also Bandcamp.
Sounds like it should be on a spelling bee challenge as well. Hoosick. That's a tough one.
They're different spellings, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listeners, you can find those links up at Inwood Artworks on their website. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us today on Live and Local.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Sure thing. Well, this is Inwood Artworks On Air, where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show us some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. That really does help. Thank you so much to 809 and our friends here for hosting us, and also to hidesites.com for local promotional uptown support. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do, and that includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. You can support On Air, by the way, and all of our free programming by making a tax-free donation to us, as we're a not-for-profit organization, at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. Inwood Artworks On Air is made possible with funding from the NYC and Company Foundation, with support from Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, and the NYSCA Electronic Media and Film Grant Program in partnership with Wave Farm Media Arts Assistance Fund, and the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan, the bottom of our hearts, thank you for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims.
I'm Jonathan Bell.
For Inwood Artworks On Air.